Europe really is changing, and there is something to this view that there's a new generation coming through, people in their 20s or early 30s who are now really, they've been reading TechCrunch and GigaOM and watching Beat TV, and they are now effectively, they understand what's going on, and reading about lean startups and reading about iteration rather than kind of version release on their startup. And that's actually, as a new generation coming through. What you've got in Europe, though, you have lots and lots of different markets. You don't. Some of the markets are big enough to be able to do a Twitter clone or something, for instance. And some of the markets are very small. So you have a breadth of issues to deal with. But Yuri Milner, who was DST, was on stage yesterday here at the Monaco Media Forum, said something very interesting to me and really piqued my interest, which is that the maths and the engineering that is going to be required in the next 5 to 10 years to create the next wave of startups is really, really important now. And you know what? Europe has astounding engineering talents, great universities and great graduates. But in terms of startups, it's harder because we have less product people. We don't have big markets, so you get less product marketing, less focus on product. But we have the primordial soup. We have the compost, if you will, of a fantastic scene.
And it seems like American tech companies who've been here for a long time, but there's a lot of investment, rollouts, competition. That has to be good for the scene.
Yes, well, of course. I mean, there are. You take the Groupon, for instance. There's an outfit, the Samware brothers, with European Founders Fund, created effectively a Groupon clone and hired 600 people in 5 minutes virtually, and scaled across Europe. And then when a big US entity wants to scale in Europe, sometimes they typically buy a local player, and somebody who's scaled a business across Europe. But at the same time, you have very, very original European startups like, for instance, Spotify, who are building out from a European base and going in the other direction. Whether Spotify will eventually get to the US or not, remains to be seen. But they're still building a very interesting and fascinating business in Europe. So, it's horses for courses, as it were. Yeah.
And Mike, one last thing. You've been covering this space for a while. Is it still exciting?
Here's an analogy. It's really a little bit like being in an airliner in a plane, and you're on the plane and you're talking to people on your aeroplane, 747 or whatever, say in London, and then back, somewhere in the distance there's another plane, and that's Paris, and then somewhere in the distance, and again that's Berlin, and all of these scenes really have been bubbling under across Europe. But now we're all sort of starting to fly above the cloud and noticing the other planes, and the urban conurbations in the cities are starting to connect, and the entrepreneurs in these cities are starting to connect across Europe. So when I will go to events and cover events across Europe, where I'll bump into the same entrepreneurs and the same VCs, but they're all from different places, and they're mashing up together, and they'll, well, how's it going in Stockholm? Oh, how's it going in Paris? How's it going in London, etc. And there's a real, community here now, and I think it's taken the last 3 years really for it to get going, but it's absolutely coming together.